Please welcome to the stage Planet co-founder and CEO Will Marshall.
Hi everyone. So this COP is the COP where nature went from being a sideshow that was more or less ignored to being center to the party. And the very next step after people, countries, companies make their commitments on nature is measurement and accountability. And that's where satellites come in. And so I'm going to show a few slides today about how we use satellites to help us to monitor everything going on around the planet and help that accountability step and the tools that enable us to take care ultimately of what we call Spaceship Earth. So you can't fix what you can't see, or as Mike Bloomberg likes to say, you can't manage what you don't measure. Until you measure it, you can't manage it. We've had many examples of this. But what we set out, my team and I, when we left NASA about 10 years ago, was to launch a fleet of satellites that would enable us to image every point on the Earth's landmass once per day. And having launched the largest fleet of satellites in human history, we got to imaging the whole Earth every day in 2017. And what we're trying to do now is make that data visible, accessible, and actionable so that everyone can utilize that data to empower them to make smarter decisions on a whole range of activities. Just a few examples of some of the things we've been doing recently. We've been helping in Germany with the floods as they afflicted, both helping with the real-time law enforcement and activities for the response and for preventative work afterwards. We found oil spills recently in New Mexico, and we discovered a whole set of nuclear missile silos in Western China that was previously undisclosed. And so we are shedding light on world events and helping the adaptation of the planet to sustainability. It's super important across a whole range of areas: agriculture, finance, manufacturing, forest management. Of course, there was a big announcement this week about ending deforestation. We can help that substantively. And it's all about having data in a timescale to do action. So historically, satellite data have been the point where at the end of the year, you would have a stock count of the Amazon and you would find there's a big hole. Well, now we're having data on a daily basis. We can literally image and see every tree, and if a tree goes down, we can take action before any major logging activity takes place. And 40% of logging takes place in the form of forest degradation at the individual tree level. We can see individual trees. So it's timely information that enables us to act. But it's not just in the field of deforestation, it's in a wide area. And in fact, it's also extremely useful for sustainable finance, and I'll talk briefly about that. Broadly, this data set is empowering digital transformation of the global economy, where big data and AI are helping industries to digitize, and the sustainable transition of the global economy. It can help with both the monitoring and measurement of ecological sites, the efficient operations of them, like in sustainable agriculture, and improving transparency and reporting to ensure that our companies and countries are staying accountable to the goals that they set. Let me give you a couple of examples. A couple of months ago, we released the first map of all the world's coral reefs. It was the first time that coral reefs had ever been tracked, and we can surprisingly track the type of coral reefs from our satellite data, because we have all these different spectral bands that enable us to tell the type of coral reef. So we did that for the whole world. And already, I'm pleased to say that 6 countries have established marine protected areas around the coral reefs that we mapped for them. It shows you how countries take action when you show them the goods, show them the huge value. And then I was speaking here at Bloomberg Green Summit last year, and we had just announced this partnership with Norway to track all the world's tropical forests on a daily basis and help them prevent deforestation. So Norway paid for this data. It's available through the UN to the forestry ministries in all 64 of these tropical countries. And 1 year in, I'm pleased to say we have 132 countries and over 9,000 researchers using this data to track daily change. And it's amazing. In many countries, Our data is used before and after images to hold landowners accountable in courts of law thousands and thousands of times last year across many different countries, helping stop and enforce illegal deforestation. And this week we had the one-year anniversary of that event here at COP, and it was really great to be celebrating that, and we're hoping to scale that up. Finally, we have a Forest Observatory of California. We're hoping to extend this to the world, but basically this is tracking wildfires. It's useful for two things. One is the detection of wildfires to help the emergency response. Where's the line of the fire? Where's the wind blowing? And so on, to help the real-time action. And we can tell the amount of material in the forest through our near-infrared band, which enables us to basically tell where's the sources of future megafires to help the firefighters with preventative work. We started with California. We mapped every tree in California, helped understand the stocks and future potential for fire. And now we're helping them to expand this to other regions of the world. We want to extend it to other rural regions that are afflicted by wildfires. This is one mission I didn't mention this time last year because it didn't exist. This year we announced that we're building a third fleet of satellites. It's called Carbon Mapper, which are able to detect point source methane and CO2 emissions across the whole globe at the facility level and down to a sensitivity that will be able to detect 90% of methane sources. So NASA JPL flew a hyperspectral instrument over California doing a baseline to find all the methane sources, from whether it's from agriculture facilities, waste management centers, or oil and gas leaks from those places. We are taking that instrument, putting it in space on a few dozen spacecraft that will enable us to monitor point source methane emissions. Again, methane was one of the targets here. The next step after we set those targets is measurement and holding accountability. This fleet of satellites is exactly dedicated to that. And Bloomberg Philanthropies very kindly donated $25 million to this fleet of satellites to help us to build it, bringing the total funding of this to $125 million to get us to the first few satellites. So I'm here to bring you the message that the next step on all of these commitments at COP is measurement and accountability. And satellite data is not a silver bullet, but it's a significant value to helping us with that next phase of accountability, whether you're a country or a company. And so with that, I have time for a couple of questions if there's any questions. But that's Planet. Thank you. They said there may be a couple of questions if there's any questions. Yes, take.
Thank you. I'm Charlotte Horton from the World Biogas Association. Will you be able to map methane emissions from organic waste, food waste, landfill sites, manures and slurries?
Yes, so the question is, can we measure methane emissions from agricultural sites? And the answer is yes. These set of satellites will be able to monitor and catch methane emission down to 100 kilograms of methane produced per hour. And that is the kind of scale where most agriculture facilities are more than that when they're producing methane. So we should be able to see those. Again, the California survey showed that 100 kilograms per hour is about the sensitivity you need to catch 90% of sources, and a good fraction of them were in agriculture. So we should be able to do that, at least for the significant methane source emitters. Yeah, any other questions? Yes?
Principal Global Investors. How do you come up with the suggestions and partnerships with Bloomberg or with the Norwegian government? Do you have a list of ideas that you put on your website, or how do you find and partner with investors?
Well, it happens all different ways. Some people approach us and say, "Wow, you're doing this, can we help?" Other people, so Norway was looking at deforestation. How do we manage that problem? They were actually entertained building their own satellites, and then found out about Planet and said, "Okay, well, you can do that already, great. Let's pay for that data for these countries." It happens in different ways. It happens by telling people like yourselves that this exists, because most people don't still know that these sort of systems of, like, we have 200 satellites imaging the whole Earth every day. A lot of people aren't even aware that that tool exists. So it's also getting on the stage and telling people. Any other questions? Yeah, at the back. We've got
Thank you.
19 seconds.
The work you're doing with coral reefs is very exciting, and I wanted to explore another possibility for the ocean. The ocean is the biggest carbon sink. Plankton is to the ocean as trees are to the land when it comes to carbon. So do you foresee being able to track plankton and the health of plankton in the seas and the blooms that come up and kill all the fish and all these things? What kind of work are you doing with that? Thank you.
Yeah, well, strangely enough, we can see the algae blooms from space. We see that really regularly. I mean, we obviously can't see the individual plankton and algae, but not that good. But we can see them en masse, and we do. And we can track those. And the patterns of that both are important for climate, as you mentioned. Also, they tend to correlate with disease outbreaks in tropical countries, and so we are monitoring it also for health reasons. But we're very open to collaborative ideas where this sort of data could be utilized for that sort of work. We're trying to extend the corals work to include seagrass and mangroves, and I think your point about algae blooms is actually really a smart one. We haven't got a project in that area yet, but I'd love to start one. Come and chat to me afterwards. Thanks very much, everyone.